Okay, thanks everyone for joining today. Awesome to be coming back to BSides Knoxville. Looking forward to presenting there in person someday. I've heard that it's a really cool venue and a really cool conference. So thanks everyone for attending my talk. So a little bit about me. If you're not familiar with who I am, I'm Phillip Wylie. I have my CISSP, OSCP, and my SANS GWPT certs. I'm an offensive security instructor at INE. I'm also an adjunct professor at Dallas College. I'm the founder of the Pwn School Project, which is an education-based meetup that was originally focused on offensive security topics, but over the years we've transitioned into more general cybersecurity because there's a need for people getting started in the industry. I've been in IT and InfoSec for over 23 years, specifically in security for a little over 17. And the last 9 years working in offensive security as a penetration tester. I've done web application pen testing, mobile pen testing, Wi-Fi pen testing, as well as performed as a red team lead. I was featured in the Tribe of Hackers Red Team book and also the co-author of the Pentester Blueprint, Starting a Career as an Ethical Hacker, which I gave the talk on here last year. I'm a co-host of the Uncommon Journey podcast and just started my own new podcast called The Hacker Factory. And I'm an Innocent Lives Foundation ambassador and champion, and a Hacking is Not a Crime advocate and board member. So my offensive security path is a little unusual compared to most. I started out as a pro wrestler out of high school because I didn't know what I wanted to do for a living, and I was a power lifter, big muscular guy. So people said, "Hey, you should be a pro wrestler," and I thought that sounds good. I just really didn't plan on college and didn't go to college, so I wrestled professionally for a while, and then in '98 I got married, and I needed a more stable income and a lifestyle more conducive to marriage. So I worked in retail sales, I worked in manual labor, I worked in restaurants, and really just didn't find anything that I liked. So one day I was watching television, and one of the trade schools advertised their AutoCAD program. So I went to school and I became a CAD drafter. And through CAD drafting, I found out about sysadmin work. I found out that it seemed more interesting than the CAD drafting. And before drafting, I had no exposure to computers, and found out that I was pretty good with computers and had more of a talent with the computer itself than I did in drafting. So I taught myself how to build computers, took a Novell network class and became a sysadmin, did a Windows 95 and NetWare 411 rollout for a national company. And so that's kind of how I got my start there. Then in January 2004, I moved into InfoSec, doing network security. In 2005, I moved into application security, and application security is where I found out about penetration testing. I ran vulnerability scanners and different type of vulnerability scanners, and also learned about the field of pen testing. And so I got laid off in 2012, and I went to work consulting as a penetration tester. And then one of my last offensive security roles that I moved into was a red team lead, doing more of the adversary simulation. So the agenda, so we already covered my offensive security career path. And one of my purposes for doing that is some people think sometimes that I don't have the potential to be a pen tester. I like to share if someone that's a former pro wrestler, meathead weightlifter can learn how to be a pen tester, that anyone that puts in the time and effort can be a pen tester. So I like to share that part of my story. Not really necessarily needed to describe my path, but I think it's helpful to help others and hopefully motivate you. So also on the agenda, we're going to discover what we're going to discuss. What is offensive security? The offensive security domains, a red team intro, red team tools, a red team blueprint to show you how to become a red teamer, and also some resources, learning and certification and Bookwise. So this first slide I like to share with my students each semester, and I'm a hacking is not a crime advocate, so I also share that hacking is not a crime if you have permission. You know, hacking is a skill set, and being an advocate for hacking is not a crime. We're trying to help the media, the news, and other people outside of the security area to realize that hacking is not just a criminal activity, it's used for good during pen tests. So in this slide, I got this quote from Spider-Man: "With great power comes great responsibility." Uncle Ben was telling Peter giving him this quote. And I think this is a good one for the hacking skill set. So only hack if you have permission, and even better, permission. Hacking without a crime is illegal. Hacking without permission is illegal. So you'll make sure you have permission. You don't want a criminal record to affect you getting a job, and that not only affects getting a job as a penetration tester or other offensive security professional, it can also affect other areas of IT. So what is offensive security? Offensive security is assessing the security of a target using adversarial tactics, techniques, and procedures, also known as TTPs, commonly known as ethical hacking. So we're going to cover the different domains of offensive security. There's two major domains, but under pen testing, there's a lot of different areas that can be pen tested, and some of these can fall under the red team domain as well. So yeah, pen testing, pen tester performed against networks, including wired and Wi-Fi networks, applications, cloud, people through social engineering, and buildings through physical security. You may have a very secure environment, but at any rate, if your physical controls are not secure, your people are not checking people's badge when they come to the building, not letting people tailgate, then someone gets their hands on the keyboard, the likelihood of a breach is more probable. And so also your hardware hacking and vehicles have become very popular and a needed area to pen test. So red teaming doesn't necessarily mean equal pen testing, because over the years you've heard red teaming generalized as penetration testing. While it falls under that realm, true pen testing is a little more specialized. Just kind of like the blue team, not everyone does the same thing. Under offensive security, there's different specialties and different roles. And red teaming is more adversary simulation. And as we get further into this talk, we'll describe why that is and what the differences are. So the commonalities, so you'll see by these two descriptions there that the commonalities are very similar. You have exploitation, or the hacking piece, social engineering, phishing, physical security, exploitation. And some of these are not always part of a penetration test, but it can be. But some of these things like the social engineering, physical assessments, and phishing are done more commonly in red team engagements. So the differences. So while threat actor emulation is not really done in a pen test, you are using some of the threat actor type of techniques, although you're not emulating specific threat actors. And so also detection avoidance, you're trying to avoid detection in a red team. Sometimes this can be part of a pen test, but not always included. Red teaming is less restrictive scope. Pen testing is more restrictive and more vulnerability focused, where red teaming is more focused on things that can be exploited. While there's some similarities and differences, both types of these tests are required in So with the red team engagements, you're trying to find all the vulnerabilities that can be exploited, lead to a breach, whereas a pen test, you're trying to find all the vulnerabilities that can be exploited and exploit them. With a red team engagement, you may try to find more than one way in to exploit those systems, because if something happens, you lose your access, you need to maintain access. So having more than one way to get in is sometimes helpful. So tool commonality. So we'll see the tools here are very similar. So Linux attack platforms, Windows attack platforms, Linux, Windows-based tools, Metasploit, malware and exploits, command and control. But we see on this other side, vulnerability scanners. During a red team engagement, you're trying to go undetected. So if you fire at Nexpose or Nessus, there's a good chance you're going to be detected. So you're trying to avoid those. And both of these engagements are going to be based on the amount of time. So with a pen test, you normally have more time, and the scope is usually bigger, so you need to cover more things. So vulnerability scans are a must and needed. And then with the red team, the more heavily reliance on exploits and malware are usable more. You're still going to use exploits on your pen test, but it's a little more needed. Command and control is more heavily utilized during a red team engagement as well. So kind of a little extended intro here is red teaming is scenario-based security assessments, emulating threat actors and even specific APTs for advanced persistent threats. A goal of a red team operation is to simulate a real-world breach. Not only is the operator testing the security of the technology, they are testing the people and the processes. A good description, one of the best and more simplistic descriptions I've seen of red team was given by the Dallas Hackers Association founder, Wirefall. He described red team as red team tests the blue team. So this goes back to the people, processes, and technology. So you're testing to make sure the people are reacting, the technology is detecting the activities. So red team operations take more time to plan and perform. They rely heavily on OSINT to enumerate information on target technologies and employees. Employees are leveraged through social engineering and phishing to gain an initial foothold in the target environment. When you're internal to a company, sometimes it's easier to exploit and get a foothold. During red team engagements, a lot of times you're starting out from the internet. There may be some physical exploitation involved for the building and social engineering, but some cases it may be all remote. In a lot of cases, you're starting remotely. So be able to get information on employees, to be able to perform phishing exploits against the end users and deliver malware payloads to get initial foothold is important. So detection avoidance is very important to be successful in red team operations. We're impersonating a real world threat agent. This could be anywhere from script kiddie to hacktivist to nation state to organized crime. So red team TTPs, red team operations rely heavily on malware payloads to gain initial footholds. So sometimes you have to be a little more creative and something a little more past the realm of just Metasploit. Evasion and obfuscation is very important for malware success. Command and control, or C2, is an important tool to control compromised systems, deliver payloads, elevate privileges, perform lateral movement, and maintain persistence. Like using Cobalt Strike, sometimes if you lose connection to your target, sometimes it's easier to connect back. When you're using like purely Metasploit or other manual exploits, then you may have to exploit the systems all over again. And so sometimes the nice thing about Cobalt Strike, you lose connection, then it's sometimes easier to reconnect. So red team operations planning. So planning red team operations can be very detailed and mapped to APTs from the MITRE ATT&CK framework and tools like Vector. Vector utilizes the MITRE ATT&CK framework to plan out like your red team engagements and a way to map the progress as you go through that red team engagement. And red team ops can be less complicated as far as mapping to specific APTs. It can be more creative, just using different types of tools and techniques, because before these APTs are known and mapped to MITRE, the real world attackers or threat actors are coming up with these. So you can emulate that yourself by using common techniques. And even if the APT is not mapped out, you can actually go through and see common type of tools that are used in your specific industry. So maybe in an ICS OT environment, you may see things that are more commonly used there, and you may use those as well as things totally outside of the realm of that area. So additional benefits, a major benefit of red teaming is testing the people, process, and technology. During the operation, if the activities are not detected, the red team can work with security to tune the security defense system to detect malicious activity, spotting more into like a purple team engagement. So this is really important, because if you can go through and you're able to detect these type of tools, then this will help mature your defenses, because not every end user needs to be able to run tools that are PowerShell based. You don't want Mimikatz to run your environment. So just by simply testing these and just through a red team engagement, expanding a purple team, you can go through and detect those items and learn how to block. If it's not being detected, then tune those endpoints and EDR solutions to be able to detect those. And so becoming a red team operator, this is one of the more popular portions of this talk because a lot of people wanting to get into it, they want to know where to start. And so much similar to pen testing, red teaming is very similar. So you need to build the base. So your technology basics, your networking, operating systems and Active Directory, understanding operating systems from a sysadmin level. You know, be able to breach security of a system. You need to really understand Windows and Linux from a sysadmin level. If you're able to get a shell to a system, having that command line access, if you can shut down firewalls or services, then you know that can help you in your exploitation efforts. And Active Directory is widely used in enterprises, and also Active Directory in the cloud for Azure pen testing solution or Azure cloud solutions. That it's important to know that. So a lot of enterprises use that, so you really need to learn that area. More pen testing specific and hacking techniques, learn the different tools and techniques. Programming scripting can be very important. When starting out, you necessarily don't have to be able to be fluent in scripting and programming, but to take your skills to the next level and become a really good pen tester or red teamer, it's really good to be able to write some exploits or write simple scripts in Python, be able to execute PowerShell scripts, or you can build your own PowerShell scripts, and then using tools like Golang and C# and even C to learn how to write exploits or modify exploits. So red team focused skills. So red teaming is kind of a specialization of pen testing. And so we see some of the skills here that you really need to work on. Although you're using malware and exploits, be able to write malware or modify malware and exploits is important. Obfuscation and evasion is very important to be able to be successful using these exploits. Active Directory exploitation, as we mentioned in the pen testing skill, is very, very much needed. Command and control, because this is a very popular and widely used tools. You even see some of the popular C2s like Cobalt Strike used by threat actors. So this is a good way to emulate a threat actor using C2s like Cobalt Strike. Phishing, social engineering, and physical security exploitation, these are ways to improve upon your skills. Starting out as a pen tester, you may not be doing much phishing or social engineering or even physical security, but these are skills to kind of enhance your security. There's people that specialize in certain areas that may not be comfortable on a phone call trying to social engineer someone, but sending an email may be something they could do. Physical security they may not be into, but then some people really specialize in these areas. So if you're someone that specializes in social engineering and physical security exploitation, then red teaming may be a way for you to enhance those skills, learn more of the hacking piece, and do more red team focused engagements. And kind of just to take a step back too, with the need for red teaming that I kind of forgot to mention, over the years, the scope of pen tests has become a lot more narrow with PCI, different compliance. They focus more on the compliance piece and being compliant and not so much on the true need for pen testing and making sure the systems are secure. They're trying to check that box and be compliant. And due to that, people have gotten away from some of the pen tests. You know, at one time, more pen tests were closer to a red team engagement, more of an adversary simulation, and they've kind of got away from that. So this has really opened up the reason and popularity for this area and this specialization. These areas were getting overlooked due to the narrow scopes of pen tests. So if you've been doing pen tests for years, a way to mature your organization's security is through red team operations. So as far as the learning paths, so the hacking skills, when I started out as a pen tester, I had experience with vulnerability scanners, and I had worked in application security and network security, had sysadmin background, but I didn't know how to hack. So I went through the OSCP to gain my hacking skills. There's resources out there like Hack the Box and Try Hack Me that you can learn and practice those hacking skills. And then learning social engineering is a good one to add to your secure hacking skills. Red Team Learning Paths, Pentester Academy, Red Team Labs, eLearn Security now, INES Penetration Testing Extreme course is labeled as Penetration Testing Extreme, but it's actually a Red Team course. And Hack the Box Pro by Rasta Labs was one of the first Red Team courses out there. He went on to create his own 0-point security Red Team Ops course. And so these are good ways to learn some of the red teaming side of things. And so APT planning. So to plan APTs, we mentioned MITRE. So the MITRE attack framework is a good place to map your APTs for your red team engagements. And then Vector.io is a good tool for planning that planning that out. It has the different APTs in there so you can map out your red team exercise. And then command and control, the C2 matrix. And if you have the time, if you look up anything from George Orchias, he does some really good talks on the C2 matrix. The C2 matrix has a list of different C2s out there. Some of these are commercial, some of these are free, and you can go through there and look at it and see which one of the C2s fit your environment better. And then over the time, you may use other C2s and not stick with one specific. You know, a lot more people are starting to catch Cobalt Strike, although some of the payloads and stuff you're using, such as more of the PowerShell stuff, you may go more towards the C# stuff, but there's also open source solutions like Silent Trinity, Empire, and then Damios C2, which is fairly new. Damios came out last year, right before DEF CON, and it's a C2 written in Golang. And then operating systems, Slingshot Linux from SANS, they have a VM, and similar to Kali Linux Parrot OS, it's a hacking distribution, but it also has some of the C2s built into it as well as Vector. So the Vector tool is already installed, so it makes it a little easier to get that installed and up and running. So Kali Linux and Parrot OS, as most people have heard of for hacking platforms. And a lot of times people overlook Windows, so I like Commando VM. It's a script by FireEye that you're able to install hacking tools on Windows. A lot of times hacking your Active Directory environments and be able to leverage the PowerShell tools, although you can install PowerShell on Linux and Mac OS, it's nice to have it in a native environment of Windows, as well as some other Windows administrative tools that are helpful during a red team engagement or a penetration test. So with your attacking rig, you'll want, you know, a Linux VM as well as Windows. So different courses that you can take, Hack the Box Pro Labs by Rostamouse, Pentester Academy's Red Team Labs, and institute.sector7.net. They got a lot of stuff that's more based on malware. There's the malware creation piece is widely available, although more of this is coming out, but it has some really good stuff on malware development. And then 0-point security by Rostamouse, eLearn Security, Penetration Testing Extreme by INE is a good one, and then the Spectre Ops, Adversary Tactics, Redteam Operations. If you haven't heard of Spectre Ops, they're a consulting company that one of their specialties is red team engagements, and some of the people on our team, such as Harm Joy, has written tools like some of the PowerShell tools for exploitation. So it's a really good course, especially if you're using Cobalt Strike. It's heavily based on Cobalt Strike, so keep that in mind when you take the course. I got to take that last year, and it was a very good course and really showed you how to really leverage Cobalt Strike and red team engagements. 40 North Security, they have an initial access operations and intrusion operations, so they get more into breaking it down to red team and some of the malware development, such as also Silent Break Security, their dark side ops. So the malware dev, and then also the dark side ops 2, which is the adversary simulation. So as you advance, you know, kind of starting out, more of the red team side is what you'll learn. As you learn more development and understand that area, you can get more into the malware development, learning how to obfuscate your code to be able to evade detection. And then the SANS red team exercises and adversary emulation. It's another course out there that's red team based. And then cobaltstrike.com has videos and content on Cobalt Strike. It's a free resource and very helpful getting you up to speed on Cobalt Strike. And here's a list of blogs: Red Team Journal, redteam.guide, ThreatExpress is actually part of the the project, the Redteam.guide, which Joe Vest and his co-author wrote a book, which we'll cover here in a minute. They got some really good tips on red teaming out there. Red Team Journal is a little bit older, but still useful information. I don't know that it's been updated in a while, but it's definitely a good resource because a lot of the basics stay the same. Just some of the attack techniques and tools kind of evolve over the years, but it's still a good place to start. And then Byte Bleeder, the creator of CrackMap Exec, he's got a really good blog, a lot of good use on using the CrackMap Exec tool, which is a good password hacking tool. And then Harmjoy from SpectreOps, his blog is a good resource. BC Security, they took over maintenance for PowerShell Empire. PowerShell Empire, the version 2.7 Python version was deprecated, and BC Security took over maintaining that, and they updated it to use version 3x of Python. And then the SpectreOps post.SpectreOps is the blog for the SpectreOps team. Rastamous's blog, and then HOSSEC, Ryan Cobb from SpectreOps, that's a good resource. Silent Break, Trinity, and 40 North Security, these are a couple consulting companies that do a lot of good red teaming work, so these are good blogs to follow. iRed.team is a really great resource. This is one I've relied heavily on. And Vincent Yu, he's got a really good red teaming blog out there. So these are all really good resources to follow. It can save you some time learning and kind of point you in direction of things to learn and different types of tools that you need to learn. And then as far as books goes, there's not as many books out there. While the pen testing skill set, there's a lot of books in that area, but the Redteam Ops Development Operations, a Practical Guide by Joe Vest and James Tuberville. This is a good book there. It not only gets into the technical stuff, it kind of shows you kind of the documents that you need building a red team. So if you don't have a red team in your organization, this is a good resource to build your red team. And then hands-on red team tactics, a practical guide to mastering red team operations. This one is interesting because it actually gets into Cobalt Strike. You don't see a lot of resources in the book form that shares Cobalt Strike information. So that's a good one, and especially for that. And then the Hacker Playbook 3, while the Hacker Playbook 1 and 2 are focused more on penetration testing, the third book is the Red Team edition, focusing more on red team. So those are good books. The Hacker's Playbook, I have both version 2 and 3, and I highly recommend those, as well as the Red Team Development Operations book listed there. So certifications, there's not a lot of certifications out yet that are red team focused, but I'm sure that will grow with time. And it's a pen testing specialization. So 0 Point Security, the certified red team operator, is a really interesting cert. I actually went through that training, as well as the Pentester Academy certified red teaming expert course and the INE certified penetration tester extreme. So these are some certifications out there that are offered for red teaming, and then more pen testing focused. So a lot of the red team jobs will be looking for specific pen testing certifications, since red teaming is a specialization. So having the offensive security certifications, SANS, and eLearn security certifications are good to have that are focused on pen testing. And still, like the eLearn securities titled as penetration testing extreme, is still a red team certification. And so here is my contact information. So we'll open this up for questions, but feel free to connect with me on social media or email me. I'm happy to answer any questions. Before I started teaching, I started out mentoring and just sharing advice and techniques and tools and stuff that I used, things I used to learn to become a pen tester. So I still like to do that. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter, or email me. I'd be happy to answer those questions. And so with that being said, we can open it up to questions.
All right, let's see what we've got here. Which books do you use in the courses do you teach?
Which books do I use? I actually have the ones back here mentioned as far as as far as red team stuff. I actually use the red team development operations and the hackers playbook 2 and 3. When I started teaching at Dallas College, I used Georgia Weedman's book, Penetration Testing. I believe it's a hands-on guide to hacking. But George's book is really good for someone just getting started out in pen testing because it actually takes you through building a lab as well as teaching you pen testing. And of course, the hackers playbook. As far as the path to take with those, I would start out with George's book and then progress to the hackers playbook. And as far as the courses at I&E, I'm teaching, I'm updating content. I actually just taught a boot camp today. We're offered a cloud pen testing boot camp. So just starting to create content for them. But at Dallas College, I was teaching ethical hacking as well as web app pen testing.
Okay. What are your thoughts about the CompTIA Pentest Plus? Is it worth it?
I think it's good for someone starting out. I like the CompTIA certs because it's really heavy on methodology. As you compare it to something like the CH, this is how you use a tool, and they really don't chain stuff together. And so the thing I like about the Pentest Plus, it's really heavy on methodology. They cover like the penetration testing execution standard, which are things you should understand. And so that's a good one. And actually with my course, I used to use George's book the first semester, but then CompTIA came out with the Pentest Plus. The beta of that exam came out like the summer of 2018. And so I went through a train the trainer course through CompTIA. And based on reviewing some other CompTIA content, I really liked it because our college did a lot of CompTIA courses, Security Plus and the CYSA Plus courses. And I really liked CompTIA because of the methodology. Going through and seeing some of the real tools used in the real world, I was really impressed with it. So I think it's good. As far as certifications go, some entry-level positions may look for it, but it's as far as getting a job, I don't know where it really helps that much there. But as far as getting, the education and understanding methodology, I think it's a good place to start.
And are you planning on sharing these slides, or have you already?
Yes, I can share those slides.
Yeah, you get so many resources in it. Like it's just a gold mine.
Yeah.
A bunch of people have asked that same question.
I really need to do it, sit down and consolidate, because my Pentester Blueprint talk, I got resources on that as well. And so yeah, I can share the PDF.
Okay, great. Yeah, and there should be, we can put it on the Sked page. I know it's designed for you to just upload to the page for this talk. And we could probably drop it into the Discord as well.
Okay.
Let's see, is certified ethical hacker still worth getting? I know I've seen that on like some hiring folks still put that on there.
Yeah, it seems to be a popular one with HR, and then it's one of the DoD certs, which Pentest Plus is now on the DoD list of certifications, and that's where it's been pretty popular. When I was consulting, at one point, my employer, we were bidding on a government contract, and they asked me, and I was OSCP certified, and at the time, and they said, would you get your CEH for this contract? So sometimes, it's these government contracts, they want certain certifications, and
it's so funny though. Like if you understand what the certs are, it's like, like oh, I've got this cert. We need you to get this cert. So it's like
that's like saying you've got a PhD, but we want you to go back and get an associate's degree in the same thing.
Right. Like, would you go back and take this high school course?
Yeah, and that's like the CISSP too. You see a lot of these technical jobs, and it's really more of a management-based certification, and you really wouldn't have enough experience to even set for the certification. That's the big thing with HR, sometimes in management, just not understanding the certifications.
Yeah, the other thing I've heard about CEH, direct feedback I've heard from folks who have taken is they were shocked at how outdated it's become, and the fact that it apparently they haven't put much effort into updating it. But yeah, some of the questions are apparently very, very old.
And that's one of the things when you're looking at different companies for training and stuff. I know, like for instance, at I&E, we're in the process of updating older content, and then like offensive security and SANS, they're constantly updating. And that's where when you're using like resources on Udemy and stuff, you have to really look at the date and see if it's been updated, because some of these courses like the CEH, and it's really funny because I actually had a friend that wrote a CEH course and had on Udemy, and he gave me a voucher just to kind of review it for him. And they were kind of using some tools, from back early 2000s and stuff. So I can see where things aren't being updated.
Yeah. What was the book you mentioned about building a lab?
Georgia Weedman's book, Penetration Testing, a hands-on guide. I think it's a hands-on guide to hacking, or an introduction to hacking. So that is a really good one. Because that was one, like I said, I used that, and actually that book came out in 2014 a year after I got my OSCP, and I wished it would have came out sooner, because she covers a lot of topics in there, even covers some mobile pen testing as well. She's supposed to be in the process of updating the book as well, but it's been a pretty popular one. If you look out for the hacking humble bundles, usually it's included there.
Yeah. Okay. Previous presentations have spoke about the danger of red team and pentester burnout. What can trigger that burnout, and how do you avoid it?
Yeah, I think burnout is going to depend on the hours that you're putting in. I know someone in my community that really got burnout, and it depends on where you're working. If you're working as an internal resource, usually companies are going to be a little more realistic to your schedule. They're going to try to go for a work-life balance. Sometimes in consulting, they may have you booked on multiple engagements at one time, so that can affect that. So the things you can do yourself is, if you've got a really heavy workload at work, make sure to take breaks, because as professionals, we have to constantly improve our skills. So on the weekends, take some breaks from it, get away from this stuff. And I have to do that myself sometimes. So just take breaks away from it. You need to constantly study, but realize one of the ways I like to describe it is just the way athletes train. You're overtrained if you're not taking some rest. So you have to kind of actually schedule in rest. So make sure you're taking time in before you get burnt out, because you don't want to get burnt out to where you don't like what you're doing. So just schedule in some time away from it.
That's a great example. I've heard, I forget where I heard this, but even like the Olympic level, some of these athletes train like 20 hours a week or 25 hours a week. It was much less than you'd think.
Yeah.
Because I guess you can only push your muscles so much, and your body has to recover. Whereas mentally, like we feel like we can push it more,
Yeah.
but and then we burn out. We're like, what happened?
An interesting thing, when you look at sports too, you can actually get central nervous system burnout from sports much the same way you can thinking and stuff. So that's a lot of times why people need to rest. And there's times, of course, that when you're learning, you'll have to put in some time, but make sure to get some rest in. And because one of the things one of the things I looked at in later in my career that I kind of got burnt out with pen testing and just kind of turned me off is sometimes the hours, because sometimes you have to test after hours. And I had a client when I was consulting that I had to, when I tested them, unfortunately, it's like four weeks out of the year. So my test hours were from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And then you have those customers that you can't start until midnight or 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
And unless you're a night owl, sometimes
I push back on that stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're charging extra for that.
Yeah. So unfortunately, the companies I was working for, I don't know if they were charging more for that, but the thing was always annoying, and I know you have experience in the area, but doesn't that always annoy you, the engagement managers that come up and say, do you want us to test after hours? Instead of just saying, what time do you want us to test, and let them guide it, because then if the customer has any fears of you testing during production hours and they didn't, they may have it now.
So, and the point that we made in those cases is, okay, so we're going to put one of our pen testers on third shift. Okay, if they do break something, are you going to have people there to fix it? Like maybe your users aren't there, but guess who else isn't going to be there? Anybody that can fix it when we break it.
And how hard is it going to be to get a hold of someone after hours? Is the application or environment going to be working when people come in the next day?
Yeah, we had Adam Compton giving a talk earlier, and I distinctly remember it felt like 2 or 3 months he was on third shift basically, and I almost never saw him because he had an office right next to mine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I almost never saw him in that time. And yeah, we had plenty of pen testers, you know, that would just turn down certain things. Like, yeah, no, I'm just not going to do that. Yeah, it was interesting. So on the topic of burnout, just sharing a little bit of my own experience here. When I started a consulting organization, me and a buddy of mine, Kyle, I started volunteering on Friday mornings at an animal rescue. And because otherwise I was just working 7 days a week. Like, because with your own company, like you're not only doing the engagements, you're doing all the sales, you're doing all the marketing, you know, it's like, you know, we used to joke that the paying work was what we did in our spare time, like outside the normal 40 hours when we actually landed work. But yeah, I found for me at least, I kind of have that personality where I can just get sucked into it and forget to take breaks and things like that. So for me, I have to actually schedule something that forces me away, like actually sign up for a 5K or something like that I'm forced to train for, you know?
Yeah, definitely make it, especially, you know, you get into some projects and you're really making good progress and really getting into it. Sometimes it's hard to break away, just like even studying, because I remember going through the OSCP process back years ago. You know, it's kind of hard to do it now. I'm like 55 years old, so 9 years ago it wasn't as difficult. Man, when you start getting over 50, it gets a little tougher to stay up late. And I used to easily stay up to 3 a.m. in the morning and go to work the next day, but now
I can't pull all-nighters anymore.
No, I can't either. I fall asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more question here. In your experience, is there a particular operating system that seems more resilient, or is it mostly a matter of context?
As far as withstanding a pen test or not crashing during a pen test, I don't know what
we need more context for that one, I think, maybe.
Because you could be talking about a target, what's going to
withstanding a pen test. Yeah,
so a pen test.
So I guess maybe, you know, one that's easier to defend.
I would say as far as less issues and probably being more resilient, it's been my experience, like Linux-based systems seem to hold up better against it. But during my pen testing career, there was one instance that I had some systems reboot. It actually was a couple of firewalls that were just kind of old and outdated, and I was running mass scan. Everything else held up okay, but then mass scan rebooted those two firewalls.
That's a rite of passage as a pen tester. We all have lists of things that we caused to reboot accidentally and how we caused them to reboot. Like I remember Polycom phones. You don't want to send any web requests to older Polycom phones, you know, with over a certain amount of characters in the, or a certain length in the actual, because they got a web server on them. Yeah. And because it's a real-time OS running on them, you know, if you crash any process running on that thing, and like old Cisco routers, same way, and like the firewalls, you're talking about, you know, if you overflow any buffers there, the whole thing just fall over.
Yeah, that's one of the things you learn as you progress in your career, get used to things. And what helped me as a former sysadmin is I was always careful in environments not to take things down. Because, you know, when you get started, sometimes you can be a little gung-ho and you're just more concerned with getting domain admin or root to a system, and you don't think and take things down. So that's one of the advice I give anyone starting out is be very careful, and your customer or your employer is going to respect you more for not just going there recklessly taking stuff down. So you don't want to have those calls when you know, rebooted a firewall or took something down.
Yeah, the organization I was at was renegotiating their contract with the federal government. And that was 100% of the revenue was that one contract with the federal government. And they were using those Polycom phones when I took them down. They were in all-day meetings trying to negotiate that contract. And every one of those phones went bloop, bloop.
Yeah, my probably more the most times I guess some of my first denial of service situation or taking a system down was back in my sysadmin days. I remember working in a rack of servers and getting ready to reboot a server and actually reboot a production server instead. Push the power button.
Yep. Got another question here. What's a good entry level role for someone that wants to eventually develop into a red teamer?
So yeah, of course you're going to want to get the pen testing experience, but places you can even start that people don't think about sometimes is some organizations have teams that do nothing but vulnerability scanning. And I worked for a bank before. We had like a team that did nothing but vulnerability scans, and we also had a remediation team, so you could graduate from vulnerability scanning to the remediation team. And the remediation team would just go back and do rechecks on the vulnerability to see if they're still vulnerable before having us do a retest. So those are good places to start. Some other areas I think they're kind of good. A local pen tester in the Dallas community, so those may be familiar with Tinkersec on Twitter. He started out as a SOC analyst and moved from a SOC analyst to a pen tester. But during that time, he used his time really well. During pen tests, he used to really monitor the traffic and then work on tuning the systems to detect that kind of traffic. So that's where these skills make people better at their jobs and why it's good to understand it. So, while you're a SOC analyst, understanding the attacks are going to make you a better SOC analyst. If you're in digital forensics incident response, understanding the attacks are going to make you better at your job. But even like a SOC role was good. Sysadmin wasn't bad. That's really where I got a lot of my knowledge. But
same here.
Like a vulnerability scanning team. And one of the things that to share too, because a lot of times people say, do I have to be a sysadmin? You don't necessarily have to have that experience. And I'd say take whatever job you can. If you're not in IT, it's going to be easier to get a security job if you were a sysadmin than just going in with no experience. So take whatever job, help desk or SOC to get in, and then just kind of advance from there. Sometimes like when I moved into security, I was a sysadmin. If I'd been outside the organization, I probably wouldn't have had a shot at getting the job. So I think take what you can to get in there, get the experience, because all experience is valuable in pen testing. If you're doing development, if you're doing sysadmin work, if you're doing network administration, that's going to help you as a pen tester.
And they're not sysadmins anymore, they're cloud engineers now.
Yeah.
Things are changing.
Yeah. Those youngins, they keep changing everything.
I really need to talk to somebody who does that. I keep seeing cloud engineers like being like an entry level, cloud security engineers and things like that being entry level roles. And I'm really curious as to what they actually do, how their day to day differs from like an old sysadmin gig.
Yeah.
So
that'd be interesting. I need to talk to some of my former sysadmin friends, coworkers did get out of it. They just kind of stayed with it. I need to hit up some of them and just kind of see how that world's changed. Because I know a lot of them early on, virtualization became a big thing. Because right as I was getting out of being a sysadmin, virtualization had been around
Same
a while,
here,
but in like January 2004 is when I moved out of sysadmin work. But there was a really
nice.
big push to go
June
to
2004 for me.
Oh, cool. Cool.
You just got one other question. I guess as long as we keep going here, they're going to keep firing questions.
Yeah.
Is there a such thing as an effective pen tester with no programming experience?
Yeah, I think so. I think some of the tools, a lot of people you don't have to be you don't have to be a programmer to get started. I can modify scripts and I've modified exploits, but I really don't know how to code. So you can do it. I think a lot of the tools, and you've been in this for a while, Adrian, that how things have evolved, that at one time you kind of needed to be able to program and script, but with things like Burp Suite, like brute forcing logins and stuff, it's easier to do a Burp Suite than trying to figure it out with even using tools like Hydra and Metasploits help automate certain things. So there's tools that's helped automate the process. But if you're interested in programming, I think it would be good to learn, and it's only going to make you a better pen tester, but you don't have to have it to get started.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it makes you more efficient. So in my career, I haven't done a ton of programming. I have written scripts and things like that on and off, and done some programming work, but I've done a lot more reading it. So
Yeah.
I think it's the quicker you can open up the source on something and understand what it's doing, whether it's an exploit you're running or a web app that you're pen testing against and you're using the inspector or something like that, or burp, it's really important to at least be able to read that stuff and understand what it's doing.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Like if you happen to come across a jar file or APK file that you can reverse it, then you're able to see what the code's doing. And that's one of the things I do. I've modified, scripts in some code, but a lot of it just like reverse engineering, reading code and seeing what it does. That's pretty much the extent with me. But writing a program.
Well said. All right, I think we're good. That was excellent. Thank you. A wealth of resources. Yeah, just if you want to put the PDF on your Sched page, as soon as you have it up somewhere, we'll let everybody know where to find that.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks for moderating my session. It's good to see you again. I look forward to getting to hang out with you in real sometime.
Yeah, likewise. Looking forward to next year. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Philip.